by step, Peter became interested in sponsorship and discovered all that can go wrong in this area. So this experience led to the creation of Sponsor My Event, and he's active in developing Sponsor My Event's vision, the execution, as well as the marketing. So, and you also speak at conferences, webinars, podcasts like today, and of course, your favorite topic, inbound sponsorship. So here we go. We are going to just give people a little bit of information about joining us today, if that's cool. So as you know, we are not on Facebook anymore. We are just on our custom live streaming service. Very excited. You are going to be able to interact with us by asking questions or offering chats in our chat role. And we always like to have those questions, so do feel free to join us. And we are now ready to rumble. Let's get to it.
It's Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so you know what that means. It's time for another episode of #EventIcons.
Presented by Endless Events.
The show where you get to ask the icons of the events industry anything. Use the question panel on the webinar to submit your questions. Or you can hop on Twitter. Submit your questions with #EventIcons.
We'll be answering your questions live during the entire show.
Before we get started, the more people we have watching, the better conversation we can have. So please help share #EventIcons on Twitter and Facebook.
Just tell your friends to watch at www.event-icons.com.
Now, without any further delay, this is #EventIcons.
Peter, so thanks for coming back again. We totally appreciate it. Now, for the people who haven't joined us before when you've been on, tell us a little bit about how you got into the events industry. What was that transition?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Indeed, for the third time, so it becomes a good habit, definitely not a bad habit. So it's a pleasure being here. How did I get into the event business? Well, I think it came quite naturally. So my first contact with the event business was actually back then when I was still a student. So I was together with some friends. I was running an organization where we made lighting for concerts and everything. So we organized also partly our own things. I did light shows, and for sure, that was the first moment where I discovered I need some money, basically, and so I found out that you can have sponsors. I was totally naive and going to the sponsors and just asking for some money with a pitch deck, which was probably totally lousy. So that was my first contact actually with the sponsorship industry. Then over the years, I finished my studies. I created my first company, which had nothing to do with events at all. So it was more internet business, video production business, etc. All these things. But still, you're always involved in the event business in some ways, be it that you're sponsoring yourself as a company because you want to get more visibility, which was the case for me in this case. But also, of course, then later on that I was partly organizing small events again. And at some point, we developed a platform, which was a platform for business events. So it was kind of a matchmaking platform for business events where people could matchmake their profiles, etc. It was quite an interesting platform, a little bit successful. But most of all, it was very interesting because more and more organizers came to us and they asked us, cannot you help us maybe also to find some sponsors for our events? There is a real need. We don't have no sponsors. And okay, we looked at each other, my co-founder and I, and we said, okay, great. We have here a platform which is doing matchmaking. And at the same time, we have a need to bring together event organizers and sponsors. And why shouldn't we do a matchmaking platform for event organizers and sponsors? And that was actually the initial kick, I would say, where we said, okay, it's worth trying to do it. We made a first prototype of the platform and just here we go. And there we were on the market, and that's where I am now. So being really in the sponsorship business.
So it's interesting, actually, that whole idea of, events need sponsors, but I think also sponsors need events. I think Absolutely. In sort of, in today's reality of everything is, there's so much digital, so many messages coming at us. So let's talk a little bit about that, about how you see smart sponsors using events well.
Well, the thing is, you say very correctly, sponsors need events. I mean, it's not very difficult actually for sponsors to have a large pool of different events that they could potentially find. But the problem is finding the right events is also quite difficult for sponsors. If you're a big sponsor who's known, then of course you're run over basically by so many requests, which is very difficult actually also to handle for them. But if you're a company which is not necessarily so well known and you're not on the radar of typical event organizers, then you spend a considerable amount of time also to find the right events and to find those events which are really the perfect match for your brand actually. And that's also where I'm stepping in, of course, with Sponsor My Event, but I've been talking to so many to so many sponsors actually who simply say that they're spending really a lot of time of finding these events. And then of course, trying to figure out what is the right event for me, be it from demographics of the attendees, from the visibility that they could get, to other factors, budget constraints, etc., etc. That's something which is really, really difficult, partly for the right event sponsors.
Yeah, it's really, so what are some ways that you are helping people to find those matches?
Well, it starts actually from both sides. So we have, on one hand, we have the event organizers who can sign up on our platform and create their profiles, and the profile will be publicly available in our search engine. That means even those sponsors who haven't signed up on Sponsor My Event, they can discover the events on the platform, basically. What we do is, of course, we collect a certain number of sponsor-centric information that needs to be put into the profile, which are helping us actually to match the event organizers, the events, with the sponsors, because we know, especially for those sponsors who have signed up, what kind of preferences they have, what kind of events they would like to see, and based on these preferences, we can do the matchmaking. But that's, of course, only the first part, because just pure machine matchmaking still, I would say, doesn't work. You need to get your hands a little bit dirty, and you need to work with the event organizers and the sponsors to go on the call, to speak with them, bring them together, helping them to make the negotiation. Because just connecting them at the first is only really the first step. Making it successful is something completely different. And there you need really to have a lot of different factors that you need to bring in line. Otherwise, it simply doesn't work.
It really does. You know, what you just said about it can't just happen by machines. It is about those conversations and really digging into what's really going to, what does the event really need? And also, what does the sponsor really need? I think that, when we think about sponsors, we think about them, it's not just a funding partner. It's not someone who's just randomly giving you money for an event. It's really about that sponsor, like you said, really looking for that proper fit that's going to give them access to that market and to that audience, but also in a meaningful way, because it's, one of the things that I always get frustrated with is when people are like judging by the number of leads that you got. So to me, it's not about, how many badges did you scan? It's about how many quality conversations did you have? And so how do we make those matches so that those quality conversations can be enabled? And it's not one phone call or one proposal. So let's just talk about proposals as well. So I'm sure that you have seen the good, the bad, and the truly awful. So, what are some things, if you're an event organizer, what are some of the things your sponsors are looking for in those proposals?
Well, the first thing, let's start simply by telling a couple of mistakes that event organizers are doing when they're putting together some proposals. And there are a lot of mistakes that they can do, I can tell you. No, the first thing is simply that they very often neglect the perspective of the sponsor. I see it very often that you have event organizers, they do a copy paste from the Eventbrite profile of the description. They put it in there, and it's an all-purpose description, which is usually targeted to the normal attendees, which is not necessarily something which is interesting for the sponsors. So that means the whole proposal that they're sending out is very often not very sponsor-centric, and should be really tailor-made for each sponsor, because that's so important that you highlight really the benefits for the sponsor, that you show that you can be a reliable partner for the sponsor. And that means also simply just putting yourself on the side of the sponsor and seeing your event, your own event, with the eyes of the sponsor. And you will discover, if you try to do this exercise and if you do it well, you will discover so many more different things about your event that you haven't seen before, starting from simply, okay, what is the demographics of my attendees? Things that a lot of event organizers never thought about. The second thing is, okay, how can my attendees actually perceive the sponsor during my event? What kind of visibility do I give him? Is it really something which is engaging, or is it just simply a poster which is hanging there, etc.? All these things. So that's something which is absolutely key, that organizers really change the perspective and see their event from the other side. And that helps enormously to set up really a proposal which is compelling, and which will obviously have also better chances to be read, not only read by the sponsor, but eventually also to be considered by the sponsor.
It's true. So I think there's, we talk about sort of as those hygiene benefits, right? So you get your logo on, in the mobile app and on the website, on a sign, and you're going to get a certain number of registrations. But to me, that's just so obvious that you're going to have those things. Those aren't really actually benefits. So what are some of those things that you're seeing that are, what are some of those benefits that people are really looking for? We talked a little bit before the show, about, C2, which is an event we hear about often. We've had them on the show. We hear about it often in the event industry. As this sort of, mecca of coolness for events. And I know one of the things that they do with their sponsors is essentially, we won't give you a logo until, or a logo presence until we talk about how we're actually going to activate your presence. So how is your sponsorship enhancing the experience for our participants? And some really, one of the examples that they have was, Car2Go is one of their sponsors, and they created a Car2Go waiting lounge where you could go in and you could find them. If you and I found out that we're going to the same place, maybe we're going to share a car and go to that same place or nearby, or, so now I'm making friends and I'm in a relaxed environment and I'm getting my bottle of water and I'm getting my cool car, and, it becomes a totally different experience versus maybe just a few Car2Gos at the curb because they're a sponsor with a sign inside pointing out. You can really take those moments and change them entirely so people are interacting with the brand. So what are some of those things that you're seeing?
Well, I think the key really to a successful sponsorship today is simply to create, from the sponsor side, to create an added value for the event and for the attendees, especially also. You cannot just go there and have a passive sponsorship and expecting that the clients are going to run after you, because it will not happen anymore. I mean, putting a banner is completely outdated in my opinion, and I have a very nice example. I mean, everybody knows in the meanwhile that since 1 year or 1 year and a half, when you're watching YouTube, you're flooded basically by advertisings, which is not very cool in my opinion, but well, I know that they want to make money with it, so that's fine. The funny thing is my daughter, she just turned 5 years old. With her 5 years, she's stunningly good and just finding on the iPad right away the skip button and to push it as soon as it pops up. So the only thing that she sees is actually the skip button, and that's actually what happens also during events. The human brain simply just blends out all these logos anymore. So no, the key for me is really, for a good activation, is to create an added value. That means sponsors who are going in the ring, they need to find ways today to connect to the audience by creating this added value for them. This can be extremely simple. I mean, it can be one of the classic examples that I bring always is a simple photo booth. People want to have a good time, and if you put there a photo booth and you put simply just your branding on the photos, or you give simply people the possibility to have a great time, that works already quite well. If you find some more creative ways really of getting into the event and to become kind of part of the event itself, by helping the event organizer also to make the event itself a success, then you're clearly on the winning street, because that's what event attendees, what they like. They come to the event. They want to have a successful, good event. They want to bring information home. They want to bring an added value home. They want to bring fun home, depending on whatever. And if you are, as an event sponsor, you help them actually to achieve this goal, so that the event attendee is going home later on and he says, oh, this car reseller, he was really helping me to have a great experience during this concert or whatever it is. Then actually you're winning.
Yeah, it really is about that whole, and I think that the more, and we'll talk about a little bit more about technology, but I think that it's, the more that we become, one with our phones, the more that we need to not only, create those, let's call them Instagrammable moments, just because that's how we're now referring to them in the world, that sort of ubiquitous Instagram, but it is really about taking the moments that we create within events, making sure now that they're quite visual and that they can tell a photographic story for the people who are involved in that event. Because as they do those social shares, they're now using our event to elevate their social status. And if we can connect that with a sponsor, whether it's a photo booth or maybe it's a headshot, or maybe it's just you're doing something really fun with that sponsor and interacting and engaging with that brand in a way that could be as simple as getting a donut or whatever it might be. The activation doesn't have to be complicated in order for it to have fun. As human beings, we're not that complicated. We don't need to have a whole bunch of complex things happening around us for us to smile and laugh. But when we do smile and laugh and have a positive interaction with something or somebody, that those are the moments that are memorable and where we create that nice, warm, fuzzy feeling about that sponsor brand. And yeah.
I remember a couple of years ago at an event, I came there and they had quite an interesting activation as a sponsor. They were setting up actually kind of an igloo tent within the event itself. And the idea was you could just go in there and there was a camera and you could record basically some experience, whatever you wanted to tell into the camera. You could tell into the camera, and they were creating later on. They were creating a compilation video of all the best things that people were telling there. It worked perfectly well because people were curious. I mean, that was the first thing. Simply, they saw these igloo people coming in, going out, etc., etc. And at the same time, I mean, people, especially when there are small groups or so, they like to share maybe some funny insights, some things, etc. And then, of course, it was also a competition. They knew other people also sharing funny things. So we need to do something which is maybe a little bit more funny and combine then simply with the branding on the video, etc. This created really a great experience for the attendees and of course also for the sponsor, and really this added value, non-intrusive. So that was totally a part of the event and people really liked it. And in my opinion, it's always very simple. If you're giving people a great time during an event, and it's a fun event, of course, then you have all the sympathies from the attendees. If you're at a conference and you provide really this added value by providing more information and extending maybe also the event itself beyond the boundaries of the event, that's extremely helpful also.
Well, and I think, I was just going to actually just went off in a little tangent in my brain about that. One of the things I know, having, worked on many conferences over the years, is what do sponsors want is they want an opportunity to show their thought leadership. So, I think that finding those speakers who can give you not a commercial, but who can really give you that thought leadership, and how are you seeing some of those opportunities being developed?
Well, you need to show your competencies during the event itself. So if you want to develop your thought leadership, so then show that you have competencies in this area. But again, don't go there now to your event and boast around that you're the best and that you have here and there, but do it in a way so that you help to engage with the people, and that you let people actually come to you because they would like to engage with you also. So you need to play with curiosity, then you need to provide information. And that's also where I come in again with a term that actually I created some time ago, which is inbound sponsorship. So I like this term because for those who are not familiar now with inbound sponsorship, it's actually kind of an idea which comes from inbound marketing. Let me just explain in a couple of words what inbound marketing versus outbound marketing is. Actually, outbound marketing is a classic form of advertising, of marketing that we know. So I like to use the idea or the example of a car reseller or a car manufacturer. You put a big banner with a car, you highlight how many horsepower it has, what colors you can have, what kind of features it has, etc. And the biggest hope is, of course, that as many people as possible are seeing this advertising and that they're running to the car reseller to buy this car. So that's typical outbound marketing. You have the information and you push it out to the people as much as you can over all the channels that you have. It works for sure, but it's cost expensive. It's very expensive. It's not necessarily very targeted, etc. In stark contrast to this, there is a concept of inbound marketing, which is more playing with building up a long-term relationship of trust with future clients. So the car manufacturer, in this case, he could, for example, set up a vlog or a blog where he provides for free information about how you can maintain your car, how you can maintain your winter tires, whatever, simply. And by this, he would build up step by step over the months even, or sometimes even years. He will build up this relationship of trust with people who just come back, get this information, and maybe they're driving a completely different car. They can apply these hints, what they are giving. And after a certain time, they say, oh, I need to have a new car. And they have been receiving this valuable information by this car reseller or car manufacturer, and they say, that was great. So I had a great experience with them, so maybe I should try buying a car from them. You can perfectly apply this concept also to event sponsorship by just simply not being intrusive, not pushing out your knowledge, but simply just being there and helping people to get more insights, more knowledge through this kind of concept of inbound sponsorship. So that's something which works perfectly well also with thought leadership and just combining it in a very sophisticated way.
It's always such a challenge as, you know, as a conference organizer to build your program and to balance all of those needs. You know, you have the needs of your participants, obviously, around that education. And then you have, you know, again, these, you know, sponsors who would like to show their thought leadership. And then we also have a lot of things happening, I think, around different ways that we're now delivering information. I think that, you know, we're hearing a lot about, you know, no more sage from the stage. Let's really create interactive experiences. And to me, that's exactly when you can really get those, you know, create a genius bar by X company, or, you know, setting up campfire sessions in, whether it's in a booth space or a hallway space, or, you know, anywhere that people can sort of gather and share dialogue that's, you know, really being curated by those sponsors. I think that there's just this sort of limitless opportunity that we are not taking advantage of. And I think one of the things, and I just want to ask your opinion on this, and not something we've talked about before, so I am going to put you on the spot a little bit. But, you know, we always have this, you know, we create sponsorship levels, right? So this level costs X, and this level costs X, and this level costs Y, and it comes with these benefits and those benefits. And now, right? I know you're laughing, but this is what happens. So how do we get past that? How do we make things so that it's more meaningful for the sponsor and also better for the event, but where it still feels like, if I'm A, B, or C company, that I got a similar value to somebody who invested a similar amount of time, energy, money, resources, whatever those resources might look like?
Well, let me just tell you why I was laughing, actually. The reason is it's very simple, actually, because we on Sponsor My Event, every event profile comes, of course, also with sponsorship packages. And the sponsorship packages we have on Sponsor My Event, they're also, of course, different tiers. You have quite a lot of flexibility just to do whatever you want to put, be it a diamond sponsor or a platinum sponsor or a wood sponsor or whatever you want. So you can put it in there. The fact is that these things are very important as an indication what could be possible. But to be really honest, I have rarely seen any of these packages being sold just as they were advertised. I urge also every single event organizer that they need to be flexible right from the beginning when it comes to the definition of the sponsorship packages. It can be an indication what you can propose to the sponsor, but at the end of the day, it's a question of negotiation. I mean, you go in there, you start talking, and you start developing new ideas together with the sponsor. That's something which is so important for event organizers, to remain flexible and to adapt your proposals really on the fly if necessary to the needs of the sponsors. If you're able to do that, then you show to the sponsor right away that he matters to you. That's the first thing. On the other hand, also, you acknowledge as well that every sponsor is different and every sponsor has different needs. You might have, for one and the same event, you might have one sponsor for whom it is extremely important to have a physical presence during the event, with maybe a little booth, or maybe just during the networking where he can mingle with the people. While for some other sponsor, it might be much, much more interesting to get better coverage over the social networks or maybe on a conference video which will be produced. And there you need to show your flexibility and to adapt your packages really on the fly. And that's something where I have the feeling that still a lot of event organizers are struggling also, especially, of course, the smaller ones, maybe less experienced ones, because they believe that you have basically your prospectus and you have all the different packages in there and they're sold like this and that's it.
Well, and I think quite often too that a lot of event organizers don't have the luxury of also having somebody on board with them who is a sponsorship consultant or who is really focused on that piece of it. And it's a little bit, sometimes I'll just use, we'll see something like, if we're hiring somebody to do registration and they say, okay, that will be $15 per registrant. And you think, $15? How long can it take to register somebody when you own that technology? But the reality is that if you actually added it up, it probably takes half an hour per participant by the time that you take them through, you answer their phone calls, maybe you set up a chat bot, you build all of your documentation around it, you send, you have a few phone calls, you have, emails that you answer, you print their badges, all of those things take time. And we undervalue that immensely. And when we start to take tasks like that and we look at sponsorship, when I think about the sponsorship work that we've done over the years, really a top level sponsor is going to probably take 50 to 100 hours of time. And I don't necessarily always feel like I have 50 extra hours of time to do that. But sometimes you just have to, from building your prospectus to having meetings with them to really listening to and hearing what they say and all your sponsor fulfillment that goes along with it. Yeah, and I think that that's definitely can be a limiting factor, and it doesn't make us necessarily lazy, but it makes it so that it just feels like it's one more task you have to do. So sometimes I think we need to flip our heads around about, that it's not just another task that we have to do, that if we actually are approaching sponsorship in a way that's really holistically looking at the benefit for the sponsor and the benefit for the event, that we have an opportunity to work with them to create a much stronger event and for them much stronger results. And then going back to that sort of quality of conversation, the nice feelings that you create for people, because when they're having a positive experience with their fulfillment, that's going to translate and trickle down to the experience that they offer your guests. It just becomes such a win-win-win at the end of the day. And it's work. And it's just not a job that is that, we call it a non-popular job in the event industry, or one that people aren't really as aware of.
The problem that I see very often is that event organizers are not aware that they need to sell actually their event to the sponsors. I keep on telling to event organizers, you have a product that you would like to sell and your product is your event. So please go to the event or to the sponsors and try to sell it. Now selling, of course, I know that from my own experience, selling is a business of its own actually, because not everybody is a salesperson, and especially event organizers are totally overwhelmed very often with many other things. There are plenty of things that they need to think about, that they need to organize before their event can go live actually. So as you said, it's not the most popular business to sell sponsorship. The other problem that I see also, those consultants actually which are out there, they are for good reasons also more interested, of course, helping the bigger events, because they have only a solid income when it comes to the bigger sponsorship packages. But there are so many small and very interesting events also who deserve actually to have a helping hand, where it's simply not possible for a lot of consultants just to jump in here. In general, I would say also it's very important for event organizers to realize or to understand that, first of all, the sponsor, of course, has to be a partner. The sponsor is never a cash cow. It's the partner, and you should bring on the sponsor as early as possible on board. Because if you bring them on board really at the early stage of the planning of your event, the more possibilities you will have as well to create this partnership and to create the added value also, because only then the event sponsor can come up eventually also with his own ideas, what he could contribute to the event to make the event definitely a better place for the attendees. And that's something which is quite often forgotten. I mean, we have on Sponsor My Event, we have these typical last minute requests, literally 2-3 weeks before an event is taking place. I say, oh, we need some sponsors very quickly. Can you help us? Simply, to be honest, no. In most of the cases, we cannot help them because it's simply too short, and no sponsor would be interested just getting into the ring at such a short notice. Sometimes maybe for very small amounts, $500, $1,000, it might work, but it's rather unlikely, I would say.
Oh, for sure, because it has to be part of, as a sponsor, it has to be part of your overall strategic marketing plan that you look at the beginning of the year is which events do I support. So, back to what we were just saying, one of our guests well said, we separate the position of selling from the producers and organizers heavily as though it's a different industry in and of itself. And we couldn't agree any more with that, could we? Because it is, sponsorship is very, and I found, so I'm definitely on the producer side of it. But I would really work hand in hand with our team, with our fulfillment team, and with our sales team to make sure that we were along the way identifying and not missing opportunities to really showcase sponsors in ways that would enhance the participant experience. And for me, that was kind of the fun of it, was to figure out, how can we take something that, or if I had, kind of a crazy idea that I knew that I was going to need a little more investment, it'd be like, so who's going to fit into this, crazy little idea that I have? But those are often also the things that became the most memorable on site. But you're right. I mean, that's a process that you're starting, 6 months to a year or even farther out, depending on the size and scope of your event. But certainly not 2 or 3 weeks out. And I think it's also too understanding the business cycles of your sponsors and knowing, are they a December year end or an April year end? Are they, when are people looking to make those decisions? How can you get the information that they need so you can be part of that decision-making process with them?
I mean, one of the problems that I see as well is very often event organizers are not doing their homework when it comes to really preparing the demographics of their event and to understand whether a sponsor that they would like to reach out is really a good match. I mean, I see it very often that, especially now, first-time event organizers, and it's forgivable, of course, but still, they have just this vision. They would like to have Coca-Cola. They would like to have Pepsi, or who else, these big brands. They would like to have them on board. And then they're coming up with events where you say, okay, but it's definitely not a good match for these sponsors. So it's really important, actually, that they sit and do their homework by doing the research and to see what kind of target audience actually is my company that I want to target? What are they targeting? And is there a match between my audience and their audience? Then the other thing is also when it comes to the pricing of the sponsorship packages, which is quite a complex topic, of course. I mean, you could do webinars just about this topic very easily. But I always try to explain to my event organizers that are coaching, which I'm coaching, to explain to them, put yourself again now into the position of the sponsor and think about the return of investment. Is it really a value for them to invest? I mean, if you have 50 people coming to your event and you want to have for one sponsorship package, you would like to have $5,000, and the service that the sponsor is selling, bring them per sale, let's say $20 per year, then this is not a return of investment which will work. So, and that's something which especially smaller event organizers or unexperienced event organizers have a very hard time to understand. But I see that even experienced event organizers sometimes fall into this trap. Another point where I also see is a certain reluctance also to move towards sponsors. I mean, you're not going to sit there and wait till your sponsors are going to come to you. You need to go to them. You need to get out. I mean, it's not only Sponsor My Event who can help, of course. You need to do it also yourself. I mean, I remember I was running a coaching some time ago. It was not for event organizers, but it was for artists. And they were interested in learning more about sponsorship and how to approach sponsors. And there were some hardcore artists actually in there who were interested, but also quite reluctant. So I told them, if you want to find sponsors, go on LinkedIn, because most of the companies, they're on LinkedIn. Most of the responsibles, you will find who is the one, contact them and just do it. I had 2 people in the group who said right away, I'm not going to connect on LinkedIn. I said, yeah, but if you don't connect on LinkedIn, how do you want to find the people? Yeah, but I'm not going to connect on LinkedIn. I said, okay, but I'm sorry, but you're not so exclusive that the sponsors are going to run and they're not going to knock on your door. You need to go where the sponsors are. If you don't like LinkedIn, I totally understand it. I can also appreciate it if you don't like it. But still, if you want to have the sponsors, make a move, go where they are.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think that this idea when people say, I don't do social media, it's just like, are you insane? Like what, honestly, what century are you living in that you don't do social media now? If you're in business, I mean, it's just a platform for connecting with people, very simply, you know. And I was at an event last year where we were having this conversation about, you know, they really wanted to grow their business, but they didn't want to be on social media. And after I listened to them for a while talking in the room about, you know, well, how do I, you know, build this so that I can get to the phone call with the person? And, you know, and I said, I quit my job last June. Left after, you know, 3 years of building up something really successful. It was awesome. And it was just time to move on. And so I went traveling for 6 months. But during that time, I did all of this little work that I didn't expect to do. But every single one of those things that came up came from a LinkedIn message, a Facebook message, a Twitter DM. Nobody was phoning me to talk about stuff. Nobody was even sending me a more direct WhatsApp or text message. They were all finding me on these, and we could be connected to, as many human beings are, we can be connected on multiple platforms, but all of them came through these social media channels. And you're right, this is how we now find people. It's a perfectly appropriate way to connect with people in today's world on a LinkedIn platform to talk about a business relationship, which is what a sponsorship is. It's a business to business relationship. So I think that you're right. It's just time to get out there and recognize that it's not the worst thing ever.
I mean, it's probably it's a shift in mindset, not only related now to the sponsorship business, but the way that today business is done. As you say, it's completely different. But also, for example, I'm traveling obviously quite a lot. For me, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter where I'm having my office. I can have my office in a Starbucks. I can have my office somewhere in a WeWork. I can have my office wherever I have an internet connection, and this internet connection I have wherever I have my smartphone, of course. I'm taking out my iPad and I'm productive at the end of the day. So I remember last year I was sitting in for 2 hours. I was sitting in New York in Bryant Park. I had my headphones on. I was working totally focused, simply because I was between two meetings. And that's something which is still for a lot of companies, something which is very far away still, this mentality that you can do your business wherever you are and with what kind of computer and media that you would like to. So I think there is still a very steep learning curve for a lot of maybe more old-fashioned event organizers or sponsors, just simply to accept that there are other ways than the ways that they have been applying 5 years, 10 years ago. And I said only 5 years or 10 years. So it's not an eternity, actually. So it's only a few years, actually.
Well, and I think that it's, it's kind of this reality of, like you said, is whether it's a sponsor relationship or how we're connecting with clients and finding clients. It really is that it's all changed. So let's go down the technology path a little bit more. So obviously, Sponsor My Event is an awesome platform it's a technology platform for helping to connect people. That's great. People all have their smartphones and we all have these different mediums for connecting. So now we're, getting into our conferences and our events and our sponsors are there. How are you seeing sponsors activating with technology or conference organizers activating sponsorships and really showing off their sponsors with technology that's working?
In the meanwhile, there are so many ways, so much fascinating technology that can be used actually to create stunning moments, useful moments, or simply sometimes non-intrusive moments. Just simply to give a couple of ideas, which are from almost, I would, mainstream to more avant-gardist. So the first thing is, if you put somewhere touch screens, there is one company which is called Giant iTab,
Yeah, they're great.
They're actually great. So I remember when they launched their product back then in London. So I was quite a lot in touch with them. So they have these giant vertical touch screens, and they're running actually an Android or iPhone emulator on it, so that you can have really the surface with a normal operating system where you can have your apps, etc. People can interact with it. That's something which becomes more and more standard. That's why I said it's a little bit more mainstream in the meanwhile to have such things. But it's a perfect way also to engage with the sponsor and the sponsor with the audience. So that's something which is technology-wise basically a platform. So it's like a canvas. You can do whatever you imagine, because you can develop an app for it. You can use a PowerPoint presentation. You can put everything that you want on this thing. And if you have clever ideas, you can use this technology as a platform just to engage with your audience. Then the second thing that I see, it's something which is definitely something which is not necessarily now mainstream, and I don't know if it ever will become mainstream, but having, for example, some hologram projection of some virtual character who, combined with artificial intelligence, is able in an intelligent way to communicate with the audience. For the moment, something like this is totally stunning, because people are absolutely not used to see something like this. And by that, actually, if a sponsor is making the move and setting up such a system, for sure he will get the attention also. And if he's doing it in a clever way, so that you have some meaningful conversation actually with this artificial intelligence, then you can really unlock a certain potential, of course. I believe that something like this can become more mainstream in the future, for the simple reason manpower is costing a lot. And if you want to go to an event as a sponsor and you want to engage and interact, it will be much easier actually to use artificial intelligence systems, not necessarily combined now with holograms. That was only one example, but you have many different ways simply just to use artificial intelligence in a completely non-intrusive way, but just simply engaging with the people in a way so that people really have the fun also of it. The third thing is where I believe that we are already seeing now a lot of interesting technologies and results, is the whole augmented reality world. So everything which is AR is totally fascinating, because it opens up a whole new bunch of possibilities for sponsors and attendees, where you can have overlapping information which are shown, which can be powered by sponsors, which can be really extending actually the event by itself. I see it coming that sooner or later we're going to have smartphone AR applications where you just need to hold up your smartphone, you're seeing the speaker, and at the same time you will have additional information about the speaker where you can connect maybe with other people through AR. So there are plenty of ideas and visions that you have, which will be extremely interesting also for sponsors, and where sponsors can position themselves in a very, very interesting and efficient way as well.
Well, and with AR, it's so easy to just layer in sponsor information. It's really, it's not that complex. We've spent the last couple of years working on just seeing what people are doing with, where, and the great thing about AR is that it can just be done through your phone, so whereas with VR, we're still really in that goggle world. We're still, it's a much more solitary experience. Whereas augmented reality, you can just, put something up, and whether it's a, if somebody, you put up a poster in your booth that somebody scans over, and all of a sudden now you have some 3D information popping out about, like, that's still enough of a wow that you're going to have an interesting response to that if a sponsor starts to do those kinds of things. It's just, yeah, you're right. The opportunities are just limitless at this point. And I really like when we can take things and kind of blow them up a little bit so that people get more than they expect, right? But there's so many companies doing it as well right now. I mean, maybe that's from the perspective of where I live, but there's so many companies that are working on AR and mixed reality applications that as we're starting to see it as more of a business tool as well, it's going to be something that we can really, bring in into a much more mainstream applications.
The interesting thing about mixed reality or augmented reality, it's kind of a platform. So it provides some technical solutions for it. Yeah. What you do with these technical solutions, it's totally depending on your creativity. I mean, you can go from something very, very simple by just putting information on it next to a speaker, as I said, to something which is totally interactive or engaging also. And as such, I believe that there are so many creative things which will come up over the next years. For the moment, the problem is still, of course, a cost factor, because developing AR application might be very expensive, of course, beyond all the possibilities for a small sponsorship. At the same time, also the adoption from the normal people on the road is also limited for the moment still. But this will change. I mean, I see more and more mainstream applications in my app store. I was downloading recently. I was downloading an application which just lets me point my smartphone actually to the sky, and I see where the sun will be at what time of the day. So it's a very simple example, but something which proves for me also extremely useful for certain scenarios when we're doing, for example, a video outside or so. I need to simply know in these things, and that's something which will become mainstream. So people will not see anymore that this is AR, but they will just use it because it provides an added value again. And it comes back again to the term of added value. So always added value.
Yeah. Well, and it's even those simple things, it used to be you would do a site inspection and you would hope your measurements were right. Then we went to laser pointers, and now you can just have a laser pointer built into your phone that gives you, measurements within half an inch. That's awesome. So it's a whole new world of how we're approaching things. So, who are some of the stars you've seen in activations? What are some things you've just been like, what? That's so smart.
Well, I have one example, and it's a couple of years old, but I'm still bringing it. It's a very small example. But I still absolutely love it. It was a company, I think it was from Romania or Bulgaria, actually. It was a brewery. They wanted to get involved into an event, and they actually wanted to make a game where you could participate in the game, and you could win travel. So the only thing that they needed, actually, they wanted that attendees are typing in their email address so that they can participate in the game. So very simple. The typical traditional way would have been to put a terminal there with a computer, with a keyboard, type in your MS. Who would have used it? Probably nobody. Now this brewery said, "Ooh, wait a second, we're a brewery, let's do something which is a little bit more related to our business." So what they did, actually, they took a lot of beer cans and they assembled these beer cans in a support, and they were putting electrical contacts on the top of the beer can so that they transformed each beer can into a key for a computer keyboard. So basically you were able, by typing on the tops of the beer cans, you were able to type your email address in. They were putting it there. So the first thing, of course, what people saw, why are there standing 24 or 36 wired beer cans here? So that looked, of course, a little bit intriguing for the people. And then everybody went there and said, okay, I want to try it, how it works. And people were typing, and then they saw, oh, I can enter my email address so I can win a prize. And it was a perfect activation, because first of all, the people were curious. Someone started trying it. Other people wanted to do it as well. People were taking photos. It was shared. It was here and there. And for them, it was really, really a funny way just to type in their email address and to participate in the game. So it was not anymore a burden. Oh yeah, I have to type my email address, and what are they going to do with my email address and here and there? No, it was something where they said, wow, cool, I want to try this as well. And so of course you can imagine that the success from this campaign was exponentially bigger than for some normal activation, which would never have worked in this case. So that's a small detail, a small example, which is not one of the big stars actually, but a small example which was also not very not very expensive. And for me, the perfect example of that, if you have some creative ideas, you can create something which is totally interesting and works perfectly well without having to spend a lot of money and maybe a lot of fancy things left and right here and there. Just some creativity, maybe some technical skills, of course, and you have something which is really, really compelling.
Well, it's just really about getting people to have a reason to come and talk to you. It's fascinating to me. If you just, again, as humans, if we're going to events, we're going because we want to have an experience, and we're going because we want to do something that's a face-to-face something with other people. So when we can create a space that's not, and I always think about, and you and I feel exactly the same way about banners, but as you walk past something and you start to avert your eyes, you see a logo, you avert your eyes, you see a logo, you avert your eyes, and you have rows on rows of sort of booths in a space, and then people don't stop, and it always feels a little bit like I need to get past, or it's not the environment that you hope to create. And with sort of the hill that I died on for our sponsors the first year of planning what was going to become a growing event was taking all the walls out of the trade show. And no straight aisles and no drape, and so very limited any kind of banners, because I just saw those as an 8-foot wall. And it was a massive success. We had 25,000 square feet of space, which was for a starter year was great. But people said, we don't know how you made an event that was so big feel so homey. And it was exactly that reason, that it was, I could stand on one side of that entire space, and I could see you on the other side of that space. And in between, I could see maybe somebody that I thought you should meet. And then we could connect everybody. And as people went, because there wasn't side walls and big walls around every booth, you were always interacting with the exhibitors. You weren't having to step in or go around. There was no 8-foot skirted tables that people were sitting behind. Like, all of that was erased. And so the sponsors had, it was very easy to get sponsor returns in the subsequent year, because everybody had this great feeling about the event. But that just came from just, being able to just open it up. And so sometimes you're right, it's not that complicated. And if you know that you're going into an open space, now you're focused on your activations versus on what your wall looks like. And you're focused on the right people being in that booth space to interact with people. And so, it just continues to be this great experience for people because of that. And then the leads that you get, and what you're looking for as a sponsor quite often is, those numbers of leads, those numbers of conversations. Now you not only have a higher number, you also have a higher quality. So sometimes it's just about how do we rethink just simple things like that. It's like, why do we have to have 3-foot sidewalls between everybody? Do we? Like, am I not coming here to meet people? Like, what's going to happen? It's, it's kind of like two kids in the backseat of a car, right? He's on my side. How about if we act like grown-ups and really get people connecting? Now, what about data? So what are people looking for at the end? So you've got a platform, you're collecting some great data for people. They're doing their end of event report. What do they want?
Well, I'm not necessarily now a specialist in reporting for sponsorship, but still it's a question, of course, which pops up quite often also. The thing is, still it's quite difficult actually to measure directly the success of sponsorship, because you cannot right away tell we have been selling so many items or services just because we have been in the sponsorship. Even though today, if you're doing the activation right, actually, you get more and more possibilities actually to collect these data and to put them in a report. I mean, end of the year report for sure. What is important, simply how many leads have you generated through it, but how many leads have you converted, how many meaningful conversations did you have, etc. I believe that you should try really to build this long-lasting relationship with your leads, actually, or with the leads that you generate during the event itself. And as soon as you start doing this, you will be able also to measure it. That means today, I would say some KPIs would be clearly simply with how many people I have been able to interact and to engage on longer run, let's say 2 months, 3 months, depending on the company, depending on what business you're in, of course. How many of them have been made any sales later on, so that would be a KPI. But for sure, also the KPIs in the social networks. If you have, for example, a special campaign, a special hashtag that you're using, how many people during or after the event have been using or this hashtag, how many people have been retweeting things, how many people have shared something which was related to the event itself and to the sponsorship. So these things can be measured. It depends really on a very good and sophisticated strategy. You need to know what you want to know, and you have to build your sponsorship and your activation right from the beginning, also in a way that you have built in certain things which are trackable, which is still quite difficult.
So Will's just saying he'd love to know what the most desired pre-event demographic or performance data for sponsors who work with events right now, which we talked about a little bit at the beginning, which really is that idea of matching the audience, right? So understanding your the demographic of the audience and deeply understanding the demographic of the audience. You know, where do they come from geographically? What are their job titles, sort of to give you an idea of that sort of parameters of levels. What, you know, it's not really this typical demographic. It's really about an audience demographic that's going to be in that market. Or, you know, what industry are they from? What sector of that industry are they from? Those kinds of things. For sure. Those are the kinds of questions we get asked, right? So, you know,
it's quite difficult, of course, for especially for those who haven't organized yet an event to assess really what kind of people are going to come. But still, I talk to these organizers. Don't hesitate to look across your fence. Also, you might have a lot of other event organizers who have already organized similar events. Try to get, for example, their sponsorship flyers, and let's see what they have been putting as an audience. It can be very similar. I mean, if you're organizing a certain type of concert, you're not the first one who has organized such a concert. Maybe you'll find some experience in the internet, and at the end of the day, also, if you sit there and you really think about it, you will get a lot of answers by yourself also if you really carefully think about it. But still, it's quite a difficult process.
You know what's crazy, Peter? Our hour is almost up. So always goes so fast. So if you were just picking one thing you could tell event planners, what's the one thing you would tell them?
Be the best salesperson that you could be, and don't only sell your event, but sell your event also to the sponsors, not only to the attendees, and just bring all the motivation in there. It's not the event itself, it's also you and your team that the sponsor is investing in, and therefore you need to be kind of a rock star. There is no other choice, otherwise you will not convince anyone, because sponsors are coming not to you, you have to come to the sponsor and you need to convince them.
You know what? I love that. And I have to tell you, having gone from, you know, planning many things over the years in different roles, but, you know, the last few years really focused very specifically on one thing that I understood really well, really easy to sell, the value of it. And now just sort of, you know, very newly into a new role, really deeply understanding why I wanted to join this organization and the value that it can bring to people is it's an interesting step, right? You do really need to understand what that is. And so, yeah, I totally appreciate that. Now, you have some great resources. Can we talk about Kim's resource since she couldn't be here today?
Well, there is definitely one resource that I would recommend. It's Kim's Golden Rate. I mean, she was for me always right from the moment that I was diving into sponsorship. She was really this kind of gold mine of information for me, where I learned a hell of a lot of things. And I recommend definitely everybody to visit her internet site, which is Power Sponsorship.
Powersponsorship.com.
You will find a lot of things, and she's just actually a genius when it comes to sponsorship. So that's what definitely I would say one of the resources. The second resource is actually a book that I could recommend, which I was reading quite recently, which is called Negotiation Genius. And it has kind of a catchy title, but it's a very scientific or partly scientific book about the negotiation business. And I would really recommend it to everyone who needs to negotiate. And we all need to negotiate, but especially event organizers when they were talking to sponsors, of course. It's definitely worth just reading this book and getting inspired. There are a lot of things in there where you would say, oh yeah, I heard this already, but it's a very good reminder from time to time. But also other things, how you negotiate in a healthy way and not only just tricking someone into a bad deal, but creating also a win-win situation. And as Kim would have said, a win-win-win situation, win for the organizer, for the sponsor, and for the attendee. So that's something which is absolutely interesting and absolutely important.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. We are at the very, 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 very end. It sounds like you're going to have to come back because Will still has more questions. So the line between in-kind and lump sums, all of those things. What else kind of attractive physical return sponsors want, stage branding, event titling, swag stamping, promo asset stamping. So many questions still. Now it's like exactly our 1 hour is up. So there is lots of those things still. See, we're just going to have you back to talk about more things. And I know that, Will, you'll find a lot of those answers and resources if you look in my event sponsor platform, and also at powersponsorship.com from Kim Skildum-Reid. So Peter, it is always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm thinking we'll probably see you next year.
I hope so. I'm always ready to come. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. And as everybody knows, they can find us here every week. We're recorded live every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can sometimes check out some behind the scenes things with us. We're released the following Tuesday. So next week, you can tell all your friends on iTunes, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, whatever your favorite podcast app is. Add EventIcons.com into your favorite resources and come see us every week. And of course, let us know what icons you think should be on the show next, and join us on Twitter and our Facebook group. And we have lots of places to keep talking to Event Icons. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of #EventIcons. To catch the transcription and all of the resources mentioned, head to www.helloendless.com/blog. This week's episode will be posted and available by next Tuesday. Also, let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Share your biggest takeaway.
And join the social conversation. Sponsored by Little Bird Told Media.
Just tag your post with #EventIcons. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on #EventIcons.